you might see me with my hands on my face, just dealing with tearing and, oh yeah, quite uncomfortable. So, and I feel like my red eye is really red, or my right eye is really red underneath and whatnot. So yeah, it's just allergies as far as I know.
All right, welcome back, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So we do have a quorum of commissioners, but we have Director Savara, and I will keep an eye out for Director Roper. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. I know it's a lot of meeting management that you take care of on our behalf, so I really appreciate your doing so. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Housing Authority Board of Directors meeting of Tuesday, June 21st, 2022. Clerk Moss, could you take roll call, please, and make the appropriate announcements?
Yes, I can, Madam Director. The Washington County Board of Commissioners is now meeting as the Washington County Board of Directors for the Housing Authority for this regular session, June 21st, 2022. Director Savara.
Present.
Director Rogers.
Here.
Director Willie.
Here.
Director Treese.
Here.
Director Fye.
Here.
Director Harrington.
Here, thank you. All righty, so we have no changes to the agenda, to the published agenda for the Housing Authority Board of Directors. So the next item on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of our community to share their thoughts with the Housing Authority Board of Directors for up to 2 minutes each. Clerk Moss, is there anyone who wishes to do so?
We had no members of the public signed up, Madam Chair. Would any members of the public like to address the Housing Authority Board of Directors for up to 2 minutes at this time? I'll give you just a moment to use the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Director.
Didn't click in the right place. Thank you, Clerk Moss. Next on our agenda is the adoption of the consent agenda. Today's consent agenda consists of 3 items: the minutes for our June 7th meeting, and then approval of the Housing Authority to participate in the Oregon State Local Government Investment Pool accounts, and to approve the property liability, earthquake, flood, and vehicle insurance premium payments for this next fiscal year 22-23. What are the wishes of the Board of Directors in adopting this 3-item consent agenda? We have a motion from Commissioner Willie, Director Willie, and a second from Director Savaro. Thank you, directors. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, directors. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 6-0. Next, we will move on to public hearings. And today we have one public hearing, and that is to approve the Housing Authority of Washington County operating budget for this next fiscal year. And I have my online packet to refer to. So I'm assuming that Executive Director Comey Calavar and Ms. Tanya Angie will be providing us with a short overview before we move on to the public hearing.
Director Harrington and Housing Authority directors, Director Calavar is having some tech challenges getting allowed in. So I will punt. I do see Ling on the call on the meeting. Ling, are you able to lead us through?
Yes, yes, I can. And I have apologized that my internet is not working or my computer is not working well today. My camera is not working, so sorry for that. I won't be able to show my face with you guys. All right.
Well, thank
Good morning,
you, Ling, for being. Thank you for being such a resident expert who we always count on for this, so please take us through it all.
My honors. All right. So I'm Housing Service Controller for Department of Housing Services. One of my responsibilities is to assist program managers to manage financial aspect of housing authority programs. And thank you for reviewing the budget packet. This budget was reviewed and recommended by Housing Advisory Committee on May 26th. And I will highlight the fiscal year 2022-23 housing operating budget and answer questions while going through the slide deck and seek your approval to adapt the proposed budget. Next slide, please. So the budget is one of the most important tools for guiding our programs for financial stabilities. We utilize budget to provide essential information for operating within our means. Our budget is developed based on 3 phase cycles. The first phase is determined anticipate outcomes, such as how many housing choice vouchers are available to issue and lease up, and how many affordable housing units we want to create and maintain. The second phase is to assess options to achieve anticipated outcomes with necessary and reasonable considerations, stretch taxpayers' dollars as much as possible to provide service to the communities. And the third phase will be evaluate the input and output to validate the options we have, and we'll continue with these cycles. Housing Authority is a blended component unit of Washington County. Housing Authority contracts Washington County to provide staff resources to operate Housing Authority programs. Housing Services has about $11 million of personnel costs and about $2 million of indirect costs included in county budget. About $7.1 million or 53% allocated to housing service programs, such as Metro Affordable Housing Bond, Metro Suburban Housing Service Program, and then about $6.3 million or 47% allocated to Housing Authority programs. The allocation is based on direct staff costs charged to each program. Housing Authority operating budget is not included in county budget, so we will go through over total revenues and total expenditures in the next few slides. And then we will draw down to Housing Authority operating budget by program. Next slide, please. Housing Authority programs include housing choice vouchers, AKA Section 8, public housing, local fund, and affordable housing programs. Affordable housing programs actually including all housing portfolios owned by housing authorities may receive subsidies from federal grants, the federal government, but not purchased by federal funds. Next slide, please. Proposed budget for fiscal year 2022-23 has $49 million of revenues and $47 million of expenditures. So it shows about net income of $2 million. Fiscal year 2021-22 projected net income is $5.7 million more than budgeted net income. The reasons due to we did not utilize about $5 million that set aside to do the rich rehabilitations, which is part of HP4, we'll talk about a little bit later. Then fiscal year 2021-22 projected revenue and expenditures increase, also reflecting over $24 billion of landlord compensation fund processed instead of initially was $6 million budgeted. Fiscal 2022-23 budget excluding 5 multi-family apartments, Aguilar Park, Villager, Parkside, Rich, and Bonita Villa. Those properties were actually, they are committed to low-income housing tax credit bond properties on June 9th. And those are under HP4 project. So just for reference, current fiscal budget revenue expenditures for those 5 properties were $3 million as revenue and $2.6 million as expenditures, which will be excluded from next fiscal year's budget. Fiscal year 2023-22, we are looking pretty stabilized for the future to process as many family as we can to serve, and also reserve the housing authority housing stock as much as we can. Next slide, please. I'm going over a little bit about the funding. So Housing Authority has been heavily relying on federal funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, aka HUD. Fiscal 2021-22, federal funding was lower just due to one time about $24 million of landlord compensation fund from the state, which will really assist about 4,700 households impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. In 2022-23, the reliance on federal dollars it went up is 82% instead of 70% for the current fiscal year, which is about 12% of increase. Next slide, please. This slide shows the revenue by types. Please note, the landlord compensation fund, it was included in other revenues. The total revenue in 2 fiscal years is really over $30 million. So we start to process the landlord compensation fund actually in fiscal year 2020, 2020 and 21. And this is just a picture to show the fundings from different types. The first 4 parts, they are really from federal dollars. The tenant revenue is just a rent we collect from the tenants based on tenants' income calculations. And the really high decrease for the other revenue is really reflecting the landlord compensation fund for one-time revenue. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide will show the expenditures. Most of the housing authority funds are restricted. They must be spent on designated program expenses. For example, revenues from HUD must be spent on HUD programs. It cannot be commingled funding. Just like housing assistance payment revenue is housing authority major revenues, it is also the top expenditures. We're now projected to have about $35.5 million of expenditures in the next fiscal years. It's a decrease of $22 million from current fiscal year. Is to reflecting the one-time landlord compensation funds that we process in the current fiscal year. Next slide, please. The following slides will drill down to programs. The first one is housing choice vouchers. HUD fundings of the housing choice vouchers has been slowly catching up with increased rent and housing assistance payment expense in Washington County. Actually Comey kind of wanted me to emphasize the housing choice vouchers portion. We're not paying the highest rent among all the counties in Oregon, just because in Washington County, the rent tend to be higher than other counties or other areas.
Yes, thank you, Ling. Yeah, I wanted to, good morning, Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. Board of Directors. I apologize, I had technology challenges at the beginning of the meeting, but this slide really shows what we are dealing with. If you look from 2016, our per unit cost was 700, now it's 1,000. That's the average assistance we give to holders of Section 8. And then it's growing very fast. Home Forward in Portland, they have different payment standards for different areas of the city. And they also have the tenants pay more because they have that kind of flexibility that we don't have. But, you know, the higher this number is, the less people we are able to serve. And I wanted to underscore that. Exactly. Thank you, Ling.
All right, no problem.
If,
so
if I could also just contribute for the record, Director Roper has been able to join us in this meeting as well. So she's been with us for several slides now.
I do apologize. I had the wrong link. I had the first Tuesday, so I kind of was like, this is not right. So sorry.
It's okay. We're glad to have you here.
Thank
Please, you. Ms. Huang Dries, please proceed.
All righty. Okay. So the blue bars are average funding dollars per unit per month from HUD. And the orange bars are average actual unit subsidies paid by Housing Authority per month. HUD calculates housing assistance payments, renewal funding, based on actual expenditure of prior calendar year with HUD determined inflation rate. Average inflation rate has been about 4% in the past 10 years. I would like to point out that calendar year 2016, we had inflation rate of 10.10%. And in 2022, we has inflation rate of 12.16%. That's due to a fair market rent study paid by Housing Authority in our regions. In other words, we have to challenge HUD for the actual or close to what the rent increase we'll have for our region in order to receive more dollars from HUD. Next slide, please. So we received 145 new vouchers in the past years. So basically, we increased our capacities in 2022 to help to assist more housing, more families for our programs. We currently have about 3,227 vouchers, but we only project to lease up 2,930 vouchers in 2022, just due to the housing assistance payment funding limitations. Next slide, please. In addition to housing assistance payment revenue, Housing Choice Vouchers programs also receive other funds to cover the cost of operating various programs. The Housing Choice Voucher admin fee is to pay for operations. And the admin fee is only earned after the clients move in. Currently, our current fiscal years, we are projected to receive $2.5 million. The next fiscal year, we are projected to receive about $3 million. One note to share, the admin fees, it has been applied for the proration, means that HUD only give us a portion of dollars that they recognize we need to operate the programs. The current prorations for the projection is 84%. At one time, it was low as 69%. So HUD take a discount when they paying for the Housing Authority to operate the programs. On the other hand, luckily they do not take prorations for our housing assistance payment. Currently, has been 100% funded for housing assistance payment portion. The second part of the Housing Choice Vouchers funding dollars is FSS coordinator, family self-sufficient dollars. Is to pay for family self-sufficient coordinator's position. Family self-sufficient coordinator is to assist clients to increase their earning potential, which will lower their subsidy needs. And we can use the dollars saving from those households to assist other households. The third funding source, it was the CARES Act dollars for one time. We are not expecting any dollars for the next fiscal years. And Housing Choice Voucher used to receive some county contributions. Current fiscal year and future years, we are not expecting any county contributions for Housing Choice Voucher portion. Next slide, please. All right, so here's our next project. It's funded by HUD as well, public housings. Housing Authority currently has 244 public housing units. We're now in the process of using HUD Section 8 disposition process to really dispose about 60 single-family homes. Those are hard to maintain. The plan is to convert the dollars we have available from sales of the 60 single-family units to maybe purchase of multi-family units, which can serve more households and with less cost to operate those housing units. There are three funding sources for public housing. Two are funded by HUD operating subsidies and HUD capital funds. And then the third one is tenants income. HUD operating subsidy and capital funds, they are based on HUD determined formulas. So it's pretty steady from year to year. The tenant's rent is calculated based on tenant's income. Currently, it's about 30% of tenant's income. So these programs will be operating pretty much break even for a while. Next slide, please. This slide will kind of go over about local fund programs. There are three funding sources for three programs under local fund. One is the cash flow distribution from Guatemala Crossing properties. Housing Authority is a 50% interest partners with Guatemala Crossing. So we receive some dollars cash disbursement from Guatemala Crossings. The reasons they pay off on one of two revenue bonds a few years ago. And currently the interest rate has been low. So we were able to receive some cash flow distributions. So the cash flow distribution is really depends on the actual interest rate on the bond. So it may change, may reduce, but so far we still project to receive about $2.3 million for the future fiscal years. The reason we have $3.4 million and 2.3 is really in 2020-21 during pandemic timeframes, the Guatemala Crossings management decided it's needed to keep some reserve available in case that some rent need to be paid in the rear that cannot be collected from households who lost jobs. So back then we had about $2.4 million of reserve under Guatemala Crossing program. The second program under local fund is real estate development. It's really for affordable housing portfolios increase, not only for Housing Authority, but really assisting developers to increase portfolios. So Housing Authority basically will be receiving development fees and conduit bond issuance fee for the programs that we assist developers to issue low income tax credit bonds and working on affordable portfolios. The third programs under local funds is about 10 units of non-federal funded properties. And those are the property owned by housing authorities and currently will be managing break even for those 10 properties. And they are single family units. Next slide, please. Okay, so affordable housing portfolios. I want to kind of go over a little bit on this one. Those, we have 520 units in 10 properties, and also including 3 single family unit transition housing for those. Historically, we have not been keeping up with the rent at the market, even affordable rent levels. So this is just a comparison to show the blue color is the 2021 fair market rent dollars for the market. 2021, the orange color is to indicate area median income rent. So those portfolios supposed to serve households making the 60% of the area median income. So that's pretty much the target rent we can really collect. The gray portion is the actual rent, average rent we collected from our tenants. So would have been providing those house units at really low rent level for many years. Next slide, please. Because of the reason, we couldn't really keep up with a lot of the capital improvement, keep up with the long-term maintenance portion. So since in 2020-21, we have been working on reposition of affordable housing portfolios. Really, the goal is to issue low income tax credit bond to raise dollars to work on rehabilitation portion. So a couple of things we have achieved in the past few years. One is to negotiate increase of project-based voucher subsidies for the revenue by about $800,000. The second one is issue low income tax credit bond for 5 properties. Then the other one is really start the process of reviewing the remaining portfolio to see what will be options for additional rehabilitation needed, and also implement revenue management plan to bring the rent more in line with affordable market, which means that we can keep affordable housing portfolio for a long run, not worry about running out of dollars to maintain a decent affordable housing units for our communities. Next slide, please. All right, so here's want to kind of go over a few more projects we have on funded by different funding sources. K-Burn It is 12 units for senior and disabled individuals. 6 units is really subsidized by USDA. This project is projected to have a deficit about $12,000 for next fiscal years. We have been working with USDA to create some kind of strategies that we can preserve this affordable housing for the long run, and we can reduce the deficit on this portfolio. Next slide, please. Aloha Park apartment is 80 units of affordable housing properties. Actually, the cash was restricted, and we didn't really have enough money for capital improvement. So this project actually was converted to a low-income housing tax credit bond as part of HP4 project. So the budget will not be included in fiscal year 2022-23. Next slide, please. Another project we have is Cornelia Village apartment. It's a 14 units affordable housing property just purchased in 2019. It's managed by third-party property managed company. In 2022-23, we will have a deficit, but the deficit is really reflecting the depreciation expense applied to these properties, not a true cash outflow for these properties. Next slide, please. The last properties we have is Aloha Inn Properties. This one, it was built in 1984, formerly known as Quality Inn. This is part of projects that during pandemic timeframe that become popular to convert hotel, motel into affordable housing units, or even shelter units to assist the homeless populations. This project is under construction to convert to 54 units properties, will be serving the most vulnerable populations. So this will work with Metro Support Housing Services programs to provide wraparound services for the residents in this properties. And this concludes my budget presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments.
Directors, do you have any questions on this budget overview before we hold the public hearing? Go ahead, Director Roper.
I just want to thank you, Lynn, for your thorough reports. You're always very on point, and I appreciate it to see the numbers in perspective and how the last couple of years, how much has changed.
Thank you.
Any other
It's an honor to serve this way, and it
Lane?
yes, it's a pleasure to serve on Housing Authority, and knowing that we are in a turn point that we have enough resource to really expand our portfolios, really preserve the affordable housing for the long run. And because of market reasons, this is a one-time opportunity. It's either grab it or lose it opportunities.
Thank you, Ms. Huang Dries, for that. It's really helpful to hear not only the different parts of the budget, but the effect that all the different programs have and the hard work that the full department has been doing to help ensure that we're able to address more and more of the community need here in Washington County. There's an amazing array of funding opportunities, costs certainly, and Director Calavar, you and everyone on the team tracks all of that detail, and while continuing to reach for more, and it's very, very impressive. Directors, I just want to check in one last round to see if there are any questions before I open the public hearing. No, nobody's waving me down. All right. Well, with that, then I'd like to open a public hearing and ask Clerk Moss if there's anyone who wishes to address us during this public hearing on the Housing Authority of Washington County's budget for fiscal year 22-23.
Thank you, Director Harrington. Would any members of the public wish to address the Housing Authority on this public hearing item for up to 2 minutes? We'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function if you wish to do so. Not seeing any hands, Madam Director.
And with that, I will close the public hearing. Directors, what I would like to highlight is that we have a resolution in order in our packet to approve, the Housing Authority of Washington County operating budget for this next fiscal year. What are the wishes of the Board of Directors?
Motion.
We have a motion from Director Roper. Do we have a second? We have a second from Director Savara. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or signaling. Thank you, directors. Anyone opposed? The motion carries unanimously 7-0. Thank you, directors. And thank you, Director Calavar, Ms. Huang Dries, and every member of the Washington County team for this very diligent and effective work.
Thank you, Chair Harrington and directors. We appreciate your support.
You bet. Next on our agenda is our second comment period for today's meeting. This is an opportunity for members of our community to address us for up to 5 minutes. Clerk Moss, is there anyone who would like to talk with us today?
Would any members of the public on our attendees list wish to address the Housing Authority for up to 5 minutes on any item? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Director.
Thank you very much, Clerk Moss. Next, we're moving on to Director Communications. I'm interested in sharing the floor with any directors who wish to contribute some information for today.
I would just like to point out that today's Tuesday market out in Hillsborough. Please come out there and help your local vendors. It's right there by the Civic Center, music, classic cars, and all kinds of goodies. So please come out and support your community.
Thank you, Director Roper. Anything else from other directors? Here we are deep in summer fun, and I hope everyone is looking forward to a fun summer. There are all kinds of activities, many free activities out throughout our communities here in Washington County. So, excuse me. With that, if there are no other comments from directors, go ahead, Director Willie.
I'd just like to follow up. What time does the Tuesday market start?
I know that they have live attractions. It starts a little bit before 4. I think it's like 3-ish. The vendor starts coming to set up, and they have free booths too and whatnot. But it really starts popping about 4-ish, 4:30-ish. But they got the cars lined up over there on 2nd. It's really nice.
Okay, thank you for that information and a reminder.
No problem.
Directors, it's from 5 to 8 p.m. I was able to do a quick Google search.
Thank you. I'm on my cell phone, so it's a little bit hard.
Actually, I think it's 3 to 10. At least it was last week. I went at 4:30 last week, so.
Okay, so I just want to highlight at this time, I don't believe we have a July meeting of the Housing Authority Board of Directors. Could anyone correct me if I'm wrong?
That is correct.
Okay, so we'll look forward to our meetings in the future then. Terrific. All righty, unless anyone has anything else, I think we're ready to be done. Well, no one is signaling me, so I'd like a motion to adjourn today's July 21st, 2022 Housing Authority Board of Directors, and then we will move on to the Washington County Board of Commissioners meeting.
I motion.
We have a motion from Director Roper, a second from Director Savaro. All those in favor, please signal or say aye. Thank you, directors. Anyone opposed? The motion is unanimous, 7-0. Take care, and we'll see you in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you
Keep
all.
up the good work. All righty. Well, give Clerk Moss and the team the opportunity to switch our videos over, and then we'll get going.
We are good to go, Chair Harrington.
All right, thank you very much. With that, I'd like to open the Washington County Board of Directors meeting of Tuesday, June 21st. Clerk Moss, if you could do us the honors.
Certainly, Chair Harrington. The Washington County Board of Commissioners, also meeting as the Board of Directors for Clean Water Services and all other county service districts, is now meeting this regular session, June 21st, 2022. Commissioner Rogers?
Here.
Commissioner Fye?
Here.
Commissioner Treese?
Here.
Vice Chair Willie?
Here.
Chair Harrington?
Here. Thank you, Clerk Moss. Just a couple of announcements before we get on with the agenda. One of the from the original posted agenda, one of the consent items has been pulled. That was item 15. So we'll have 22 items on today's consent agenda. For item D1 under presentations, that has been added. It will be a presentation on the proposed budget for Washington County from our county administrator. We have several public hearings today, 10 in all, related to different aspects of the budgets for the entirety of Washington County and Clean Water Services. With items E1, there is a revision to the attachment in the packet. Also, in our meeting today, we will have a presentation that is revised since the recent packet publications. But I want to assure the public that the posted packets will be updated moving ahead. And that includes the presentation for public hearing number 3. That's item E3. So no worries. We continue to ensure that the public has all available information. So with that, I think I've covered all of the agenda updates for today. So we'll next move on to the first public communication period of our meeting. This is an opportunity for individuals to speak for us for up to 2 minutes. Clerk Moss, is there anyone who wishes to engage us in this portion of our meeting?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. We did have one person signed up. They're not currently online, so we'll move them toward the end. Would any other members of the public wish to address the Board of Commissioners for up to 2 minutes at this time? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
Great. And we may have folks who choose to speak with us in the various public hearings. So thank you, Clerk Moss. Next, we'll move on to today's consent agenda. Today's consent agenda consists of 22 items. There's one set of minutes. There are 5 items from Clean Water Services, 1 item from the County Administrative Office, 7 items from Health and Human Services, 2 items from the Sheriff's Office, 3 items from Support Services, and 3 items under Land Use and Transportation. What are the wishes of the Commission? We have a motion from Commissioner Rogers, a second from Commissioner Treese. All those in favor of adopting today's consent agenda, please signal. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to presentations. And at this stage of the game meeting, I would like to turn it over to our County Administrator, Ms. Tanya Angie, and her team.
Thank you, Chair Harrington and Board of Commissioners. Clerk Moss, if you can also please promote Latricia Tillman, our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. So Board, I did want to bring forward the budget message, which you've already previously heard in the budget committees. However, due to the various aspects of this year's proposed budget, in consult with several of you, you had encouraged that this message be brought forward so that those watching the public hearing process of the board's kind of final leg of the board adoption can also have the opportunity to have access to this information as well. As I provide the budget message this year, I first need to acknowledge the strained times we are in. This proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23 arrives as our community is emerging from over 2 years of challenges, the likes of which we have not seen in generations. That includes our pandemic, recession, and housing crisis. Our organization has also been under strain as we have worked tirelessly together with our partners to protect health, well-being, and a sense of civic life for our community. As an organization, we have an opportunity now to learn everything we can from our experiences and to rethink our approach going forward. Part of that learning is the action of listening. This year, with the board's leadership, we hosted 2 virtual town hall meetings focused on how we approach and prioritize the budget. In December, your town hall had 227 participants, and in March, 85 participants. We are also supporting more opportunities for community input as part of the agenda for each of the budget committee meetings this year. Another aspect of the board's leadership was put in motion with the adoption of our equity resolution in February 2020. It is reflected an equity conscious approach the organization is deliberately taking with the budget this year. This is the inaugural year of our use of the budget equity tool, the process we have borrowed from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. Our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, Latricia Tillman, will have more to say about the budget equity tool in a moment. Latricia's team in the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement has done tremendous work with each department and office in the organization to launch the equity tool this year. With that said, the context for preparing the proposed budget this year has been enormously challenging for a number of reasons, due to both issues unique to our current situation and long building structural issues. As a result of these overlapping layers of challenges this year, the requested budgets put forth by our departments and offices outpace our revenues by approximately $30 million for the next fiscal year. As a reminder of the process, the requested budgets come to the County Administration Office from departments and offices for review and analysis. Acting in my role as your budget officer, I have worked with my team in the County Administration Office, Finance, and Human Resources to provide this committee with a balanced budget proposal. The specifics about how the $30 million was addressed can be found in the budget message. Next slide, please. And I apologize, I'm one slide ahead. Oh, no, there we go. Yes, thank you. Thank you, team. Allow me to walk through the proposed budget, looking at both the revenue and expenditure sides of the ledger. I will speak to both the short-term and structural issues as we go. First, let's look at the revenue side. The single largest discretionary revenue for the organization comes from property taxes. Like all local governments in Oregon, Washington County operates within a structure that constrains property taxes. In the 1990s, voters approved amendments to the Oregon Constitution that cut, capped, and rolled back property taxes statewide. These reforms, called permanent tax rates for each taxing district. Just like it sounds, these rates are permanent. They cannot change. The assessed values that these property tax rates are applied to may only grow by 3% per year unless a property is newly developed or improved. Taxation above these permanent rates is called a local option levy and can only last for 5 years at a time if voters approve of them. As the years have gone by, Washington County and other local governments serving growing communities are now relying on local option levies more than ever to support ongoing operations. In our region, Washington County is uniquely disadvantaged within this structure, as I will show on the next slide. Next slide, please. This chart has been updated since last year with the latest population numbers. In the yellow, you can see the permanent property tax rates established in 1997 for a 3-county region. The blue dots show the percentage of population growth that has occurred since these permanent rates were established. Despite having the second largest and fastest growing population in the region, Washington County continues to struggle to meet community need with property tax revenue derived from the lowest permanent property tax rate. I'll talk in a moment about how this structural challenge is made even more restrictive on the expenditure side. Next slide, please. Another challenge we are facing on the revenue side relates to the here and now of the pandemic response and recovery. Washington County was fortunate to receive $104 million in federal CARES Act funds in 2020. And we are in the process of receiving our total allocation of $116 million from the American Rescue Plan Act, also known as ARPA. These one-time revenues have been critical to meet our community needs of COVID response and recovery. But there is danger with attempting to meet ongoing community needs with these one-time dollars. Over-reliance on one-time revenue can have the effect of masking structural problems in the county's fiscal approach. Next slide. Now let's move on to the expenditures. As I mentioned, when your budget committee was meeting, I directed the organization to follow these basic principles when approaching the budget this year. Implement the budget equity tool. In this first year of implementing the tool, the proposed budget establishes baseline data and allows us to identify data gaps to focus on addressing over time. Latricia will have more to say on our approach in just a moment. Fund essential community service levels. Washington County services are essential to the functioning of our community. The list is lengthy and includes public health, behavioral health, public safety, access to judicial services, election services, collection and distribution of property tax revenues to our schools, cities, special districts, and so forth. As we sought to balance the proposed budget, our goal has been to preserve the existing personnel needed to cover these core services. We are also limiting the expansion of new service capacity. Continue general fund transfers. As mentioned earlier, reforms to Oregon's property tax system in the 1990s created permanent property tax rates for local governments and imposed limitations on property tax growth. When the rates were established, any temporary property tax levies were rolled into the permanent tax rate. Washington County had 2 such temporary property tax levies in effect at that time. One supporting transportation improvements and one supporting our libraries. Past boards of county commissioners have chosen the transfer to stay consistent with the funding for Washington County Cooperative Library Services and the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program. I do want to note that this proposed budget continues this practice. This fiscal year, the 2 transfers amount to 17% of the total general fund expenditures, thereby continuing these investments at the historical levels. Next expenditure point is navigating increasing inflation. Supply chain problems, wage increases, and higher oil prices are all contributing to an inflationary environment for next year's county budget, and more than likely beyond. Inflationary increases are compounded by a low interest rate environment, providing even fewer county resources to adapt and adjust to these pressures. The proposed budget assumes an even-handed approach to cost of living adjustments, a 4.5 increase for both represented and non-represented employees. Our challenge will be to navigate this period of increasing fuel, asphalt, and wages while staying focused on our public service mission. Minimize capital spending. Although the county has ambitious goals for supporting several areas of the county operations with capital projects, the proposed budget takes a minimalist approach given our current financial environment. Next year's budget anticipates limited general fund spending on capital projects, materials, and services, or other investments that can be postponed without affecting the health or safety of county employees and the public. Within this context, the county will need to explore strategic investments in its technology systems as it modernizes. One important project is starting the planning for an enterprise resource planning replacement. This is the backbone of our IT systems for county financials, HR, procurement, etc. Next area is navigating federal and state mandates. Our federal and state partners can pass laws or adopt rules, making local governments expand our services or meet certain requirements. But there may or may not be funding granted to us to carry out these mandates. These mandated programs, as needed as they might be by our community, are contributing to the structural challenges embedded in Washington County's current financial model for supporting community-focused services. Funding board priorities. Finally, your board has identified multiple priorities to invest in over the short and long term. I've already mentioned some of these priorities, such as helping our community to recover from the pandemic and continuing the county's equity work. Other priorities are listed in the budget message at the beginning of the proposed budget summary. Given both the immediate and structural problems affecting the county at this moment, the proposed budget seeks to implement these priorities as much as possible within the limited resources available. I'll note that the process of revising the organization's community strategic plan in the next few years will provide an important and vital venue for addressing some of the long-term structural challenges with our financial mode. And with that, I'll hand over the presentation to Latricia Tillman, our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, to provide your board more information about our budget equity tool. Latricia?
Great. Thank you, Administrator Angie. And good morning, Board of Commissioners and Chair Harrington. It's my pleasure to provide an update on our budget equity tool, and just want to make sure you can hear me okay. Okay, great. So just as a reminder, your board adopted the equity resolution in 2020, and the use of the budget equity tool is one of many examples of how Washington County is bringing your vision to fruition. As a reminder, equity is about outcomes and not being able to predict outcomes by race, ethnicity, or other social factors. Our budget reflects our priority investments, and with the use of our budget equity tool, we are beginning to assure that we are investing in programs and strategies that we believe will help us assure that the outcomes of our services and policies help close known gaps in access, quality, and outcomes across race, ethnicity, and other factors. The budget equity tool asks leadership and staff to answer several critical questions about equity in their service delivery, and then to identify funds invested to address needs and barriers to achieving equity, as well as to maintain or increase investments when prudent and possible in services that are best or promising practices that meet the needs of our diverse community. So some of the questions that we asked leadership to look at in the development of their budgets are data, so that we can have data-driven decision-making. So looking at what inequities do departments know currently exist, and which inequities is our budget intending to address. We are also wanting to build in transparency through the budget equity tool and how we are allocating our dollars and how we are communicating our expectations for advancing equity. We ask leadership to focus on access. So who within Washington County has access to our services, and looking at that disaggregated by race, ethnicity, language, etc. That gives us an opportunity to compare who we think should be accessing our services based on what we know in our population, and then who is actually accessing our services, and then thinking about what those barriers might be. We're also looking at quality. So how is our service delivery meeting the unique cultural norms, values, and social positioning of diverse communities? And how are our investments transforming the environments that create and sustain inequities? And then finally, we're centering an outcomes focus. So what is the return on investment of our budget when we disaggregate it by race and ethnicity? Are we seeing success equitably across multiple populations? And how do we know we're moving toward equity in the outcomes that we're investing in? Again, that comes back around to data and community perception. So with those questions as really the foundation of our budget equity tool, we received budget equity tools for all of the programs that have a personnel cost associated with them. We did not ask for a budget equity tool for dollars that were pass-through dollars. And within the budget equity tools that we received, we were able to aggregate the dollar amounts and the FTE that have been identified specifically with roles that I'll talk about in one moment. But in terms of the dollar aggregation, what we identified was that currently there were proposed investments of over $21 million in culturally specific service delivery. And this is important so that we know that we're able to meet the cultural needs and values of the communities that we serve as it relates to the services that we deliver. We are investing almost $3.5 million to help build staff equity, diversity, and inclusion capacity building. Mostly this is related to training, but it also might include expenditures in terms of facilitating planning processes or working with external vendors to develop policy or coalition building work. We also were able to identify that we invest slightly over $1 million in interpretation, translation, and accommodations for people living with disabilities to access our services. And then we asked in the development of the budget equity tool that departments identify their staff who receive a bilingual pay differential. We have more bilingual staff in Washington County than receive the pay differential. And then we have more county staff who, for whom a part of their staff time is focused on equity work, and some staff who their time is solely focused on equity work. Those were not included in the budget equity tool development process this year. We only focused on bilingual staff receiving the pay differential, but we did find that over 180 full-time equivalent staff received that bilingual pay differential. The overwhelming majority of those staff are bilingual in Spanish, with some other languages represented, but primarily that bilingual pay differential is for Spanish-speaking staff. There is quite a lot more detail than I am providing you here today, and that is located on the budget page. There's an overview document of the budget equity tool results, and then the individual budget equity tools that were submitted by each department are all posted on the county's budget page. And then just a final comment, these amounts that were identified and the FTE that were identified represent the budget requests that came from departments, and that was before the identification of the $30 million gap. And so some of the actual investment amounts may have shifted through the budget process, and we're hoping to true that up after the budget is adopted. And with that, I will turn it back over to Administrator Angie.
Thank you, Ms. Tillman. I know that our community and also our board has been interested through this process of learning more about the budget equity tool and the learnings that we gleaned from this year. Next slide, please. Lastly, I want to highlight how this budget is a result of hundreds of staff members contributing countless hours of gathering, processing, analyzing, and describing our proposed budget. I want to specifically raise the additional work and leadership of our Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement as we are just beginning our first year of implementing our budget equity tool. Our exceptional finance department has rallied with vigor to the task of producing this proposed budget and working collaboratively with my office, community engagement, and community and communications teams. We have supported your board's public input desires to this budget more over than we have seen in the county previously. Our departments, offices, and partner organizations have all risen to the challenges and new approaches involved in producing the budget this year. And finally, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to join with you in engaging in this important process and nearing the very end of this important process to support services that are critical to the safety, health, and well-being of our beloved Washington County community. And that concludes my message.
So for our public, but also for the benefit of all of us, the Washington County budget is a large budget that includes many different component parts, as demonstrated by the number of public hearings that we have today, public hearings and approvals. All of it comes to fruition through agenda item E10 later today, where we will be approving the entirety of the Washington County budget. But at this time, so that will be a good time for board member comments as well. And I know I'll probably make my comments then versus now, but who knows? So I just wanted to check in here and see if any board members had any questions or any comments you wanted to provide. Go ahead, Commissioner Treese.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I want to thank the entire team. I want to thank Mr. Rhodes for stepping in like he has. I want to thank everybody that's been involved. And what I'd like to say is directed to Ms. Angie, to Ms. Tillman, and to the staff, and that is, this is my 4th budget cycle. This particular budget cycle has been the most informative to me. I suspect that part of it is the fact that I'm getting better at understanding the process, but I believe strongly that the way that the materials have been presented, the explanation, the involvement of the public in this process has really opened my eyes to the issues that we face as a county and the direction that we will need to go in terms of making sure that we continue to invest in our county in a way that allows for us to move it into the future. So again, I want to thank everybody here. I'm especially appreciative of the equity tool that we used. It was, thank you to Latricia, your team. That was a sea change for me in relationship to our budget. But overall, the work that was done was hard. The messages that we're delivering are not easy, but the rationale and the understanding of why we're here was very well done. So thank you.
Any other commissioner comments at this time? Thank you, Commissioner Treese. Seeing none, we will move on then to Section E of the agenda, and we'll start by going over the Clean Water Services budget, as well as the Board of Commissioners also serves as the Board of Directors for Clean Water Services. Excuse me. So I will make note of each individual item, but as we move forward with items E1 and E2, which are both related to the Clean Water Services budget, I would like to welcome Mr. Terry Song, the chairperson or chair of the Clean Water Services Budget Committee, as well as the Chief Financial Officer for Clean Water Services, Ms. Kathy Leader, and turn it over to the CEO of Clean Water Services at this time, Ms. Taniguchi Dennis. And I'll announce that we're moving on to agenda item E1, where we will be holding a public hearing and adopting the rates and charges resolution and order for this next fiscal year 22-23. And after that, we will have another resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year budget and make appropriations. So I'll turn it over to you at this juncture, Ms. Taniguchi Dennis.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and good morning, Board of Clean Water Services. Kathy Leader and Terry Song will be providing some input for the board through a staff report. Thank you, Kathy and Terry.
Thank you, Diane. Good morning, Chair Harrington and members of the board. My name is Kathy Leader. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Budget Officer for Clean Water Services. I'm here today to present the staff report for both the district's fiscal year 22-23 budget hearing and the proposed rates and charges public hearing. Next slide, please. The district faces challenges ahead. Increasing regulatory requirements drive the district's investment in capital and innovation. Meeting the needs of growing the region requires the district to continually balance system capacity needs and a just-in-time delivery philosophy for our capital program. Differentiation between regional services that benefit all customers in the Tuolumne River watershed and local services to provide equity and transparency to our regional partners. Changing weather patterns that impact regulatory and system infrastructure needs. Taking care of our aging infrastructure as Clean Water Services celebrates over 50 years of service in the region. The district continues to manage inflation and chain supply issues that are impacting the district's access to affordable goods and services and competitive recruitment in the labor markets. And finally, the generational change in our workforce as we experience retirements and new recruitment of the next generation of leaders for clean water services. Next slide, please. To meet these challenges, the district has developed a budget that funds the following priorities: increasing resilience through investment in our workforce, facilities, programs, and services to deliver on regional values, gray and green infrastructure, and the natural environment. In fiscal year 22, the district created a new senior leadership position as chief strategy officer, and created the strategist group whose members identify, evaluate, and recommend new or updated processes and procedures in areas that require policy change or action across the organization that advances our strategic approach. It is the strategic approach that defines the philosophy of clean water services, identifies our key strategic outcomes and roadmaps, and lays the groundwork for how we address the historic challenges we face today and the next 20 years. As part of the permit application process, the district developed an integrated plan to establish a long-term permitting strategy for clean water services. These efforts are designed to integrate our compliance objectives with broad strategic efforts for the entire basin. The long-term efforts focus on improving watershed health and resilience, responding to growth and the anticipated impacts of climate change on our basin, continuing to provide high level of treatment, and improving watershed health and resilience. Staff from the Regional Utility Services Group, which was created in fiscal year 22 and managed regional governmental relationships and agreements, is working hard to build and maintain strong relationships with our city, community, and regional partners. The team is leading this work and helping create the kind of positive economic and environmental impact that the region needs and expects from the district. The district is also conducting a comprehensive financial review and cost of service study so we can develop a strategy for adjusting the sanitary sewer and surface water management rates and system development charges. This is a collaborative effort where we are engaged our stakeholders throughout the course of the study for input and direction of our work and outcomes. And finally, to support succession planning and leadership development, the fiscal year 23 budget includes the creation of the Culture, Equity, and Learning Program to create and manage strategies that make clean water services a place where every employee can learn, grow, and thrive, and to provide positive equity benefits to our region. Next slide, please. This slide provides a visual of the current sources and uses of budgeted funds for fiscal year 23. The $204.8 million in budgeted current revenues will be used to fund $104.9 million in operating costs, $97.5 million in capital investments, and $17.2 million in debt service principal and interest payments. Next slide, please. This slide shows actual revenues for fiscal year 20 and 21 and budgeted revenues for fiscal year 22 and 23 by type. As you can see, service charges are the single largest revenue source for the district, budgeted at $169.9 million for fiscal year 23, or 83% of the current revenues. Growth in this revenue over time reflects adopted rate increases and customer growth. The second largest revenue source is system development charges, budgeted at $22.3 million, or 11% of current year revenues. These fees are assessed on new customers connecting to the system to share in the cost related to existing and new system capacity and performance improvements. These revenues are dedicated to capital projects. Other sources of revenue include investment income budgeted at $5.5 million, Build America bond subsidies budgeted at $1.2 million, and other outlays of $5.8 million. Other outlays include revenues such as miscellaneous fees, grants, and contributions for developers on construction projects for the district. Next slide, please. The The proposed fiscal year 23 budget includes a 4% increase in the regional and local sanitary sewer rate and surface water management fees. These increases will add an estimated $2.29 per month to the typical residential customer's bill. The 10-year annual average increase in combined sanitary sewer and stormwater management rates is 3.4%. This trending reflects the district's adopted policy of reasonable rate increases on a regular or annual basis to promote predictability for the customer and revenue stability for the district. Rate growth is vital to the long-term financial health of the district and its ability to invest in infrastructure for growth and resilience, maintain service levels, and meet increasingly stringent federal and state water pollution control needs. System development charges are proposed to increase based on the published engineering news record construction cost index as of March 2022 of 8.9%. The sanitary sewer system development charges will increase by $540 to $6,625 per equivalent dwelling unit, and the stormwater management system development charges will increase by $56 to $641 per equivalent service unit. Next slide, please. The district's average combined sanitary sewer and stormwater management rate charged to cities and urban unincorporated customers the district bills directly is proposed at $60.06 per month. This combined rate is lower than our comparable cities, including Vancouver, Salem, McMinnville, Lake Oswego, and Portland, even though the district provides a substantially higher level of wastewater treatment than nearly all local, regional, and national providers of comparable services. The district is able to provide a higher level of treatment at a lower cost because of our long-term financial strategy for service delivery. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about expenditures. This slide shows actual expenditures for fiscal year 20 and 21 and budgeted expenditures for 22 and 23 by type. The fiscal year 23 budget includes current year expenditures of $218.6 million. Total expenditures for fiscal year 23 increased by $8.3 million or 4% as compared to the prior year. Operating costs and departmental costs, including personal services and material and services, total $96.3 million or 44% of the 23 budget. Departmental operating expenditures increased by $7.4 million or 8.4% due to planned labor adds and increases for certain services. Labor costs increased by $3.3 million or 5.8%. This is mainly due to the addition of 13 new FTE and conversion of 3 long-term temporary staff to regular full-time. Material and services increased by $4.2 million or 12.9%. The main drivers for this cost increase relate to an increase in software licensing costs, an increase in contract professional services, in particular for the new programs and services undertaken in 23, budgeted for culture, equity, and learning, and strategy development and enterprise performance management. Other factors include the transition of Treasury services in-house from the county and the increase in operating costs to support expansion of the natural system stewardship management sites in the community. The district continues to navigate supply chain and inflationary issues. These impacts are reflected in the fiscal year 23 budget. District staff continue to find innovative solutions to minimize cost impacts while meeting the regulatory requirements. Capital investment costs total $97.5 million or 44% of the budget. Capital investments increased by $3.9 million or 4.2%. Impacts to capital budget from the current high inflation rate is uncertain and will be managed using our just-in-time project delivery approach to monitor, prioritize, and sequence projects throughout the year. Debt principal and interest payments account for $17.2 million or 8% of the budget. Debt service decreased by $4.5 million or 20% due to the savings from refunding the Series 2011B bonds in 2021 with a net present value savings of over $6 million, as well as making the final debt service payment on the Series 2011A in fiscal year 22. Other outlays of $8.6 million or 4% of the budget include utility bad debt expense, franchise fees collected and remitted to the cities, pass-through of right-of-way and local rates to the cities with industrial customers within their city limits, and mid-year personnel adjustments. Other outlays increased by 1.5 million or 22% due to anticipated increase in utility bad debts based on current trends, equipment replacement, and mid-year personnel adjustments. Next slide, please. So that concludes my staff report. And now I would like to turn over to Terrence Song, who's the Clean Water Services Budget Committee Chair. He's going to provide an update on the committee actions that occurred at the May 6th Budget Committee meeting.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good morning, Chair Harrington and the Clean Water Services Board of Directors. My name is Terry Song. I am the chair of the Clean Water Services Advisory Commission and served as the chair of the Clean Water Services Budget Committee, which met on May 6th to review the district's fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed budget. The Budget Committee unanimously recommended fiscal year 2022-2023 budget to the board for adoption. In my 2.5 years on the CWAC, I found the work of this innovative and empathetic organization nurture a thriving community is unique. This budget represents a dedication to the people, businesses, and environment of urban Washington County, of which you can be proud. We continue to look to the future to meet the changing needs of the community as well as our changing landscape. This year's budget reflects carefully prioritized and sequenced needed capital and operating investments. And Kathleen and I are available to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leader and Mr. Song. Commissioners, are there any questions that you have before we move on to the 2 public hearings and adoption of the resolution and order? I know I will be holding, making my comments until the next item E2, but I invite you to make your comments whether now or under items E2, E1, or E2. Whatever you would like is fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Rogers.
Sure. I have a question more for you, Kathy, than anyone. What do you see? Because we'll be talking more at the county side, and that obviously doesn't impact you. But what do you see as your major challenges for financing in the next couple of 3 years? What keeps you awake at night? Where do you see your capital being burnt? And I suspect, and obviously regulatory items, I expect a lot of capital improvements, your CIP program. I expect, just the pressure for containment of rates versus, what you have to do. But if in a couple of minutes, could you just reel off what you see happening so that our viewing audience can say, gee, we can anticipate what might be going on with clean water in the next couple of 3 years.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Yes, that's definitely an area that we focus a lot of our discussions, and as the SAGE strategy groups meet and we look to the future, we're an aging, middle-aged utility. We've got to reinvest in existing infrastructure. We have to meet the needs of new regulatory requirements. This past year, we most recently committed to the safety of dams at project with the water supply study, and just made a decision to go down the route of safety of dam, working closely with reclamation and federal funding and support on that program. But then with that came a new way of meeting our water needs into the future and looking at water reuse and other opportunities to support healthy streams and water quality in the Tualatin Basin. So that's an area we're focusing efforts on and looking to fund. Also, we have our new Ripple, our innovative lab facility over in Forest Grove that we're going to be putting starting construction on in the next couple years as we finalize the plans for that building. So we'll be putting some funding into that, along with a lot of other expansion and growth projects on conveyance line, so getting service to areas in the region, and also increasing treatment at our plants. So funding of capacity enhancement and growth within our community. So we definitely have, in our CIP over a 5-year period, we have over 800 million in projects that are listed out there as areas to investment in the future. And so definitely looking at ways we fund that of a balance of SD system development charges, rate revenue, and issuance of debt, and looking at the right timing for debt issuance, keeping in mind the market and where interest rates are going, and sequencing and rolling out our projects in a way that makes sense for debt issuance. I don't know, Diane, if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
Thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate your insight about financially where we're going into the future. What I see is risks that we're going to be needing to manage. It's the risk of the climate adaptation strategies that we're going to need. We certainly see a vulnerability to the increased fire potential within the watershed, which means our strategy of utilizing green infrastructure needs to be analyzed and to make sure that we're secure in that risk. Certainly the earthquake risk, and making sure that Clean Water Services has adequate resources to recover from, whether it's a small earthquake or that vulnerability in our underground and above ground infrastructure. Another area that we're very concerned about is the future needs of the river as we continue to urbanize in the region, and making sure that Clean Water Services has advanced strategies so that we can continue to serve the businesses that choose to locate here in the region, to make sure they have adequate supply of drinking water with our partners, but also to make sure that we have adequate capacity in our wastewater systems to deliver the services that they need. I also see working more closely with the cities as they continue to grow, and to be able to expand their local systems, and for Clean Water Services to continue its work focused on the regional systems, but yet supporting the communities that rely on us to provide the retail service. And this is all on the overlay, as Kathy said, is a utility. We're middle-aged, and it's really managing the asset management overall for the district. But we continue here to serve, and research and innovation is something that we do because we need strategies to deal with the complex nature of what the river requires of us. And the just-in-time strategy is so critical. We're not doing investments that will last in terms of 20 years of idle capacity. We're having to be very aggressive in managing our capacity so that we can take advantage of the technology that allows us to serve our customers and to meet the needs of the river. So Clean Water Services research and innovation is a very applied program to directly add value to how we're providing services in a very cost-effective way, but also looking for those things that we can add to what other utilities are needing as solutions, and to create some economic value through that. But it's going to be an interesting 5 years, but we're already looking on the horizon for the 5 years beyond that for the river. So thank you, Director Rogers, for asking that question about the future. I appreciate it.
Are there any other director questions or comments at this time? All righty then, we'll get into the actions. So the first one related to the Clean Water Services budget is to hold a public hearing, and then after that, subsequently to adopt the resolution and order for the administrative provisions and fee changes effective for the first day of this next fiscal year, 2022, July 1st, 2022. So at this juncture, I would like to open the public hearing. Clerk Moss?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would any members of the public wish to testify for up to 2 minutes on this public hearing on adoption of the rates for clean water services. I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And I would like to call attention for the members of our community to the packet for action item E1 that lays out what the base charges are that we're about to take action on as a result of the public hearing that we've now closed. That includes the charges for sanitary sewer as well as surface water management. Whether you're an industrial customer, a residential customer as a result of working with our major cities, or if Clean Water Services is a partner with the city to provide the actual direct service that you experience. So seeing no public comments at this juncture, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the resolution and order with the administrative provisions and fee changes effective July 1st, 2022. What are the wishes of the board? We have a motion from Commissioner Rogers and a second from Commissioner Rogers and a second from Commissioner Fye. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners and directors. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to item E2. Can you tell I'm working from a totally electronic copy of the packet today, so sorry I'm a little bit clumsy. So we've already had the presentation, but this is for holding the public hearing for the entirety of the Clean Water Services fiscal year budget for fiscal year 22-23 and to make the appropriations. I would once again call attention to the packet for item E2. At this juncture, I'd like to open a public hearing and ask Clerk Moss to do us the honors.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Would any members of the public like to provide testimony on this public hearing of adoption of the Clean Water Services budget for 22-23? At this time, we'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
All righty. Well, then we'll close today's public hearing. And this would be a good time if any members of our board wish to make any comments on the Clean Water Services budget before I ask for a motion to adopt the resolution in order. Does anyone want to make any comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll make some. So for those of our community who may have watched our budget committee meeting, which we held the very first Friday in May, or who viewed today's presentation or the video, you may wonder, why did we go through all of those numbers? Well, it all boils down to the fact that Clean Water Services is a utility. It's an exemplary utility that does tremendous work, not only here locally for us, but also for the industry in general, so that we continue to be good stewards for our planet. So this boils down to service to our customers in the context of our community needs. And some of those needs go out decades. We're talking about very significant, expensive systems for handling our waste, and also ensuring that our surface water, remember, we live in the Northwest, there's pretty intense rainfall and snow here in our watershed compared to other places of the country. We are blessed to have that water. But all water here on planet Earth is recycled water. And I've learned a lot more about the size of the watershed that we are responsible for here in the Tualatin River watershed, which includes all of Washington County and then a little bit outside of Washington County as well. And while that overall acreage is really large, it's a pretty small river. It does have a very large floodplain because of the extent of water and snow melt that we have. But the river itself, compared to other rivers in our nation, is pretty small, which means that we rely upon the innovation of our Clean Water Services team to handle both that storm water or what falls from the sky, as well as the output of that processing of our human and industrial waste. So I want to applaud the team of Clean Water Services for ensuring that we have resiliency in our service for the benefit of our customers and the health of the river. After all, we are charged to ensure that we're providing public health to our community and related services, but also for the water quality of our Tualatin River. I also want to applaud the resiliency and commitment of the staff at Clean Water Services. Fiscal year 21-22 brought quite a few changes for all of us here in our community. But for our staff at Clean Water Services, we continue to support our workforce. For those who could work from home, they did work from home. But in order for us to have 24/7 operations that all of us as community members had the advantage of, that meant that there was a portion of our staff that had to show up on site each and every day and figure out how to deliver services continuously to meet the needs of the community. So I want to applaud that staff as we as a community went through the ebb and flow of a huge Delta variant outbreak last summer during this past fiscal year, followed by an Omicron variant. And now here we are having a lot of people who are continuing to get sick, but thankfully not the near record numbers having to go to the hospital. So thank you, staff, for continuing to be caring and nimble and showing up each and every day. I also want to applaud the full team members and their work for being innovative to keep costs down to the community that we serve, as well as reducing chemical use and increasing the natural biological systems, as well as all of the work that they continue to go through workforce processes and systems, so that we continue to be an excellent utility and that every employee, whether you're at Diane's level as a CEO, at a management level, or for every single individual contributor, you know why your work is important, you know how your work is making a difference, and how all of it comes together for the benefit of our community. So for me, these are the whys and what fors of why we go through this work, why our Chief Financial Officer goes through all of these numbers and the challenges that Commissioner Rogers was inquiring about, as well as the strategies and all of the management of over 400 employees that we have here, at Clean Water Services under the vision and direction of our Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Diane Taniguchi-Dennis. So those are my comments today, team. Thank you very much. And to you as well, Mr. Song, for being the chair of our budget committee. The board does really appreciate not only the Clean Water Advisory Committee for all of the review of our different programs and policies before they come to us while our staff is conferring with us, but also how members of CWAC make the decision to have different members of the committee serve on as what we call laypersons to the Clean Water Services Budget Committee and the hours that you invest in poring over this information. And we really appreciate having a layperson serve as the budget committee chair through the process. So thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome, Chair Harrington. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So with that, Commission and Director members, I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt the resolution, to approve the resolution and order adopting the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 budget in the sum total of $690,580,000 and make appropriations as detailed in Exhibit A of the resolution and order. Do we have motion? We have a motion from Commissioner Fye, a second from Commissioner Treese. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or signaling otherwise. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. I did E1 and E2 correctly, right? Yes, I did. So thank you, Ms. Leader and Mr. Song, for joining us today. Next, we will move on to parts of the Washington County budget. So there are 6 items that will relate to fiscal year 22-23, or am I? Yeah, I think. And 1, a supplemental budget item for fiscal year 21-22, if I'm understanding my agenda properly. And thank you, Ms. Angie and Ms. Tillman, for taking us through a budget overview previously. And at this juncture, we will move forward with item E3 in the packet to approve changes and establish the new maximum annual assessments for the service district for lighting number 1. And I'd like to turn the presentation over to Stacia Scheller, who takes us through all of this incredible work and all the details in service to community. Ms. Scheller, please take it away.
Ms. Scheller, before you start, I do want to note this is a presentation that was updated just prior to today's meeting. Clerk Moss will ensure that the packet is updated after the meeting. And Ms. Scheller will note what's been updated or what the changes are. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Harrington and Board of Commissioners. As Ms. Angie indicated, there was a version control issue with this SDL presentation. An earlier draft was initially posted to the published board packet, but I believe Clerk Moss has already updated that online. So as we move forward here, next slide, please. You'll see here the SDL assessment rates are adjusted when there are changes in the number of lot and or lights in an assessment area. Increased equipment costs associated increase in assessments over time may cause the annual assessment rate to exceed the previously established maximum annual assessment. Historically, maximum annual assessments were set randomly Therefore, we have several older assessment areas that need to have their maximum assessment rates updated to the current process. The current process is to set the maximum rate at double the annual rate, allowing flexibility for potential increases without going through an approval process each time there is a small adjustment. Next slide, please. These are the areas with proposed changes for the coming fiscal year. Each year, various changes to street lighting assessment areas occur. These can include partial annexations, lot consolidations and partitions, equipment changes, name changes, corrections, and simple errors and omissions. The annual rate setting process affords us the opportunity to make these adjustments. The North Bethany assessment area includes new developments within the previously established North Bethany area, adjusting the annual rate for all North Bethany property owners. Until this area is built out completely, we will continue to see this adjustment every year. Next slide, please. Following the public hearing, staff recommends approval of the new maximum amounts and acceptance of the proposed changes to existing assessment areas. Next slide. You can contact myself or Sheila Giambroni with any questions. And are there any further questions from the board? Next slide, please. Any questions? I believe you're muted, Chair Harrington. There we go.
No, I think what I have to do is I have to get a dual monitor set up. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I appreciate it. So at this juncture, commissioners, I want to ask if we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution and order as presented to establish the new maximum annual assessments for the service district for lighting number 1. Commissioner Trees, thank you for the motion. And do we have a second? A second from Commissioner Rogers. Thank you. I forgot to ask, do any commissioners have any questions on the presentation and the information that was in the packet?
Chair Harrington.
Go ahead.
This is Nafisa. I'm having a bit of a technical difficulties. Can you see me? I don't know where my video went. I don't see my video on my screen.
I see you and I hear you just fine.
Okay. Okay, it must be my end. I'm not on the bubble that I have in front of me.
Sorry. I know it can be a little disconcerting. Let's make sure that when we move to the next agenda topics that you're able to see the presentations for sure.
Okay, well, as long as you see me, I don't see my bubble here, my square. I'm so sorry, but I'll figure. Okay, go on. I'll mute myself and I'll raise my thumb and nod my head.
Okay, don't worry. We can see you and we can see your hand signals too and hear you loud and clear. But commissioners were there. I know there were pages and pages of all these different areas that make up service district for lighting in our packet. I don't see anyone flagging me down for questions. So we have a motion and a second to adopt today's resolution and order as I just described. Commissioner Treese, do you have something?
Did we have a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Rogers gave us the second.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Excuse me, Chair Harrington, did we open a public hearing?
No, I forgot. Thank you. See, this is where I'm. Anyway, I won't go over that any further. I better get a dual monitor. So with that, I'd like to open a public hearing. Clerk Moss, could you do us the honors?
Yes, I can, Madam Chair. Would any members of the public wish to provide public testimony on this public hearing for up to 2 minutes? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
And with that, I'd like to close this public hearing. Thank you, Ms. Sheeler. I really appreciate your doing that. And with that, now that we've had the public hearing, I need to ask for a new motion to adopt the resolution. It is made by Commissioner Treese. And we have a second from Commissioner Rogers. Thank you. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or signaling otherwise. Thank you, commissioners. I did see your thumbs up, Commissioner Fye. All those against? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you. Next, we will move on to item E4, which is, to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 service district for lighting #1 budget and make appropriations. Do we have a presentation for this? Nope. Seeing none, sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my packet at the moment. So if someone is able to see it, because I currently cannot.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is item E4, so so you
There
have
we
no
go. So I need
presentation.
to conduct a public hearing.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. With that, I'd like to open a public hearing on the adoption of the service district for lighting #1 budget. Clerk Moss.
Would any members of the public like to provide public testimony on this public hearing on adoption of the fiscal year 22-23 service district for lighting #1 budget? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I'll close this public hearing. Do we have a motion to adopt the service district for lighting #1 fiscal year 2022-2023 budget and make appropriations? Oh, thank you, Commissioner Willie, for the motion, and a second from Commissioner Fye. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we're going to move on to the Urban Road Maintenance District budget so that we can make those appropriations and levy the taxes for this. Ms. Angie, to whom are we having a short presentation?
Mr. Rhodes, our interim chief financial officer.
Hello, Mr. Rhodes. It's good to see you. Please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank the commissioners, our county administrator, the ACAs, our interim budget managers, Judy Lynn, Michael Clark, and all the Washington County staff for the opportunity to be a part of this process. And as you know, our new CFO, Greg Mon, has joined us and has been with us now for a couple of weeks. And he and I have been spending a great deal of time just kind of downloading on some of the things that are going on here at the county. So it's been a great opportunity for me, and I thank you very much. That being said, budget committees held multiple meetings to review the proposed budgets in accordance with Oregon budget law and voted to recommend adoption on June 1st and June 2nd. Each of these meetings included public input as part of the discussion to increase overall transparency in the budget process. Based on those meetings, it's recommended that the board hold public hearings today and adopt the FY23 budget as recommended. Happy to answer any questions.
And for the purposes of our community, I just want to draw your attention to the resources available in our packet. We did have a budget committee meetings where this budget was presented in further detail, and that information plus the videos are available to you. We did have a budget committee Q&A, and that included the opportunity for the public to give us input then. We also had public hearings on that. So here we are today in the last step. So next, commissioners, do you have any questions on that? Nope, seeing none, I'd like to open the public hearing. Clerk Moss, could you do us the honors?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Would anyone like to provide public testimony on this public hearing on adoption of the UMRD 2022-2023 budget for up to 2 minutes? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I have caught up with a new packet update. So at this juncture, I'd like to close the public hearing and ask for a motion to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 Urban Road Maintenance District budget, make appropriations and levy taxes. We have a motion from Commissioner Treese. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Willie. Thank you. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand. Commissioner Treese, thank you. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we're moving on to topic E6, which is related to the North Bethany Community Service District for Roads budget to make appropriations and levy taxes. This is also known as the North Bethany CSD. Ms. Angie and Mr. Rhodes, any staff overview?
Yep, there is no presentation, so you can open up the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'd like to open a public hearing. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would any members of the public like to provide public testimony on this public hearing, adoption of the North Bethany Service District for Roads budget for fiscal year 2022-2023? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
All righty then, I'd like to close today's public hearing and ask for a motion to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 22-23 North Bethany Community Service County Service District for Roads budget and make appropriations and levy taxes. Do we have such a motion? We have a motion from Commissioner Treese and a second from Commissioner Fye. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we're moving on to item E7. I didn't skip any. Nope, just checking. E7 is related to the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District budget for fiscal year 22-23. Ms. Angie, do we have any statements or presentations?
We do not. You can open up the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would any members of the public like to provide public testimony on this public hearing, adoption of the Enhanced Law Enforcement Patrol District budget for fiscal year 2022-2023? Give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I'll close today's public hearing and ask for a motion to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District budget, make appropriations and levy taxes. We have a motion from Commissioner Rogers, a second from Commissioner Treese. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to agenda item E8. This is to approve the budget, excuse me, let me double check to make sure I'm.
Chair Harrington, if I may, this item is to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 2021-22 Washington County supplemental budget.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure I read it correctly. I appreciate that backup support, Ms. Angie. Do we have any report from staff on this?
We do not, Chair Harrington, so you can open up the public hearing.
Great, terrific. Before I do, commissioners, are there any questions? We're on a supplemental budget for the current fiscal year. No, okay. With that, I'd like to open a public hearing. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Would any members of the public like to provide public testimony for this public hearing, adoption of the fiscal year 21-22 supplemental budget for the Washington County Board of Commissioners? Give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to close the budget and for the public hearing, I mean, and for the benefit of our community, I just want to highlight that the reasons we go through a supplemental budget is to make sure that we've done all the required procedures in being an open and transparent public agency for ensuring that we have everything documented on the current fiscal year as we move forward in adopting and transitioning to the next fiscal year, which will start on July 1st, coming right up. All righty, so now do we have a motion to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 2021-2022 Washington County supplemental budget? We have a motion from Commissioner Fye, a second from Commissioner Willie. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to approving the resolution in order for adopting the fiscal year 22-23 Washington County fee schedule. So these are all those fees that the community pays for service that then roll into the Washington County budget revenues and expenditures. Do we have any staff report that I need to call in?
No, Chair Harrington, you may open up the public hearing.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to open today's public hearing on agenda item E9. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would any members of the public like to provide public testimony for this public hearing, adoption of the 2022-2022 fee schedule for the Washington County Board of Commissioners? Give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I'd like to close today's public hearing and ask for a motion to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 2022-23 Washington County fee schedule. We have a motion from Commissioner Fye, a second from Commissioner Rogers. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. And here we are coming up to the last one, to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 22-23 Washington County budget, make appropriations, approve positions, and levy taxes. Whew. Before we move there, are there any commissioner questions or comments? Okay. Yes, Commissioner Rogers. That unmute gets us every time. The mouse is
finally.
Yes, ta-da!
Little tiny arrow, and I'm looking all over for it. Couple of comments. One to Rodney and one to you, Tanya. You were dealt a hand that's been building for several years. This isn't new. And I would say that I want to thank you for honestly looking at it and understanding that there's only so long you can kick the can down the road. That's my opinion, maybe nobody else's. But you're pointing that out, and you were intellectually honest enough to talk about that, because you're going to have to deal with it. So I appreciate that. The only thing I might disagree a bit about is this isn't only related to population growth. I know in your charts you like to say, well, the population's doing this and that, but it has to do with the very unique situation we find ourselves in. And we tried to deal with this 30 years ago and still haven't got it dealt with, and that's that we have a very, very large unincorporated area. I mean, biggest city in the state if it was incorporated. I mean, it's a huge area, and I'm not so certain our cost of service is, and I know you're going to do that, and I commend you for doing that later. I'm not certain our services are right sized for those areas, and I happen to be in one of those areas, so I get that. But I think this is much more complex, and the only reason I'm even saying these things and going through it is that, you know, the viewing public, they draw some inferences from charts, and they say, well, you know, gee, population is increasing, we've got to do these things. Well, maybe not so much across the board. I mean, maybe there's other things. So I know from your view of all of this and the work that you did, which I've already complimented you on, that you're going to take it seriously. And the next year, year and a half, it's going to be a very interesting period for this board in terms of trying to say, okay, can we all run for the exits or hold on long enough that we don't have to deal with it? I don't think any of us five are wanting to do that. I think we just got to take and get a firm grasp on what we're delivering, what the costs are, and ask the public what they're willing to pay for or not pay for. And so that's the only thing I want to say for the public, but for the two of you, thanks for taking this serious, because it is. It's going to be a big issue. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. You know, I don't always agree with Commissioner Rogers on, you know, necessarily on philosophy or certain positions, but I always appreciate his observations. I learned from them, and that includes the many years of service that you've had and where we find ourselves. And I look forward to our continued work through next year's fiscal year budget, but also in kicking off the county strategic plan with community and making sure that we have set goals to address topic areas such as that which your comments indicate, and make sure that we are taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, and making significant progress towards that. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. And to you too, Commissioner Treese, for your earlier comments during the budget presentation. Are there any other commissioner comments at this time? I would like to contribute my comments at this time before the public hearing. I really want to say thank you to our team. And that includes our management team as led by Ms. Tanya Angie as our county administrator and Mr. Carr as our general counsel. Our legal beagle, as I tend to chide him or tease him about every now and again. He helps me do this work and to do so lawfully and with eyes and ears wide open. As we are a large public county agency, I am reminded of the term that you can't reach what you don't measure. And this, like Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Willie, this is my fourth Washington County budget season as well. And I would just like to note a few things. First, the shifts that we have made as a county community. First and foremost is recognizing through our budget that there are community needs. We can't necessarily address all of them, but we've made great headway in addressing more and more of them in our county service levels. And for example, addressing the needs of our homelessness, houseless community here in Washington County, as well as affordable housing and certainly public health, as many others. But before that, we are more open and transparent than I think we've ever been. I'd also like to highlight the work that's gone into the future forecasts, particularly for understanding costs and revenues and being very clear about this moment in time, where we are here in the midpoint of the year 2022 and looking ahead at our service delivery in the next 1 year, 5 years, 10 years plus. We are also an agency that is fully embracing continuous improvement and recognizing this fiscal year, our budget shows us how we are functioning with outdated business systems, how we've had workforce shifts. I know going back to June of 2019, the demographics of our workforce, but also being clear about what our workforce opportunities are. Opportunities for career training and career advancement. We've also, under continuous improvement, changed our community input and engagement, evolved it. And I'm really proud of where we are currently at and where we continue to reach and strive. We've also talked through the course of our various commission meetings, but also our budget committee meetings, including the presentation today about federal and state mandates, including or especially unfunded state mandates that affect our full portfolio for public safety. Just one example is in the district attorney's office with regard to disclosures and management of information, but it affects all these state mandates have affected all of the various departments in public safety, whether we're talking community corrections, the jail, juvenile justice. And what do we mean by unfunded state mandates? That we are required to operate at certain levels and in certain ways, but without funding coming from the state. That also includes public health as another example. We need to work with our state legislators and others so that they know what it is we are expected to do to respond to community health needs and need the funding resources to do just that. The last shift I'd like to mention is the expanded programs. We have, for example, the continued implementation of the affordable housing bond programs. The housing team has also sought and received additional flexibility from the feds to be most efficient in serving the needs for our community. Work the moving to work as one example, and a most recent additional grant that they've just been awarded. But we also have the supportive housing services program, where the year 2 goals are more assertive than the year 1 goals and the work involved there, along with the workforce availability challenges. Whew, it's a lot. I'd also like to share key learning that I have had individually, how we are, with being a county agency, we're always required to have balanced budgets. And that includes this budget that we have received as proposed from our county administrator, Ms. Angie. But what we have truly, or I have truly recognized that if I call them our historic or prior budgets, our prior balanced budgets were done so by not investing in needed systems, upgrades, whether it's equipment or processes by the team. Mind you, has anyone done anything wrong? No, but the means by which the budget was balanced means that there were certain decisions made, decisions that this board is having to face now and will continue to face as we need to change those systems from really outdated systems to replace those, to improve the effectiveness, not only for the service level that we now have to deliver, but also to ensure that the great staff that we have here are working with more modern systems so they're able to do more in addressing that service level. I lastly want to share that I'm really proud of the Washington County team, really navigating the various needs here. As we refer to in many of our meetings, we have two significant initiatives underway. The foundational one, we are one Washington County. We are no longer a county with siloed departments. We are now one Washington County, and that means we look holistically at the needs and we problem solve across all departments as we are one in service to one Washington County community. But towards that end, we have the initiative of Design for the Future so that we can continue to apply different strategic programs to serve our community so that we are a stronger, more sustainable and nimble county government in service to our community here in Washington County. Thank you, Ms. Angie and Mr. Carr, for ensuring that we have a tremendous proposed budget to adopt today and systems in place to move forward as one county in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. I look forward to more. And thank you, Mr. Rhodes, for serving as our interim CFO, and welcome aboard Mr. Greg Munn in working with Mr. Rhodes and ensuring we're able to meet the challenge of our future days moving forward. I've learned a lot from you, Mr. Rhodes, and I really appreciate the learnings that you've helped me have and the recommendations moving forward. And I know I'll learn more from Mr. Munn ahead. So those were my comments in advance of opening today's public hearing. So with that, I'd like to open the public hearing and check in with Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a person, Karen James. Karen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Karen James. As you consider the budget for the County Behavioral Health Division, I would like to urge you to consider a CAHOOTS or Portland Street Response type program for Washington County. CAHOOTS in Eugene and the Portland Street Response are successful programs where clinicians and peer support specialists are dispatched to handle crises instead of sending the police. These programs are connecting people with mental health and addiction treatment, diverting crisis calls from the police, are a more efficient use of taxpayers' dollars, and most importantly, they are saving lives. Not all crises must or should involve a badge or a gun. Recently, there have been 3 deaths in the Washington County Jail. One of the adults in custody died while awaiting transport for mental health treatment at the Oregon State Hospital. A CAHOOTS type program could help divert these individuals into treatment instead of jail, where they are often arrested for low-level, non-violent crimes. While Washington County already has crisis response teams, these teams are dispatched with an officer who can escalate a situation, cause anxiety and trauma, and ultimately, in some instances, result in death. There is funding designated for these programs, including Oregon Senator Ron Wyden's CAHOOTS Act. So with accessible funding, coordinated with the existing behavioral health programs. This would only require the willingness to adopt such a program for the county's residents in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James, for your comment. Clerk Moss, do we have anyone else signed up for today?
We do not. Would any other members of the public like to provide public testimony on this final public hearing, adoption of the Washington County fiscal year 2022-2023 budget? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any additional hands, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And with that, I will close today's budget public hearing. And for the benefit of our community, I just want to highlight that Washington County is moving forward with the Center for Addiction Treatment and Triage. And that proposal includes an expansion of our crisis mental health facility. So we continue to pursue a strategy to move forward with those. In addition, this proposed budget does increase the mental health response team provided by the Washington County Sheriff's Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District, as well as our rural patrol. And the sheriff continues to work in partnership with area cities who have also increased their mental health response team support so that those licensed social workers are deployed out into the community. So we have a Washington County supportive service to ensure that as mental health crises are taking place, that we do have mental health clinicians available to help those community individuals. So at this juncture, commissioners, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the resolution in order to adopt the fiscal year 2022-23 Washington County budget, make appropriations, approve positions, and levy taxes. We have a motion from Commissioner Treese. We have a second from Commissioner Fye. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. That completes our very lengthy Section E public hearing section of today's agenda. Thank you, everyone, for making sure that I get all of those steps correct. And next, we'll move on to our second public comment period of today's meeting. This is an opportunity for members of our community to address us for up to 5 minutes. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one so far, Susan Bender Phelps. Susan, can you hear us? Are you able to unmute, Susan? There you go.
Yes.
Please go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Unmute. Good afternoon, and thank you, Washington County Board of Commissioners. My name is Susan Bender Phelps, and I'm a Washington County resident, former nonprofit executive for an organization that delivered mentoring programs for middle and high school students. I'm a business owner and volunteer advocate for pre-K and childcare before, after school, and summer programs for kids of all ages. Please reconsider placing an initiative on the ballot that will fund all of these types of programs for kids and families who need them. Pre-K is a key component in preparing kids for kindergarten. There's also extensive research that proves that childcare for younger children and out-of-school time programs for older children are essential to their education and social development, as well as the economic well-being of their families. Funding a comprehensive array of programs for children of all ages who need them, with free programs for those who cannot pay and a sliding scale for those who can pay some, would serve far more children and families. We know that quality childcare and after-school programs help kids succeed in school Kids who succeed in school are more likely to graduate and become employed. Kids who participate in positive after-school activities are less likely to commit crimes. Once kids enter the workforce, they will achieve self-sufficiency and become taxpayers themselves. Research confirms these programs dramatically reduce criminal justice and social service costs. Children who attend programs that celebrate their home culture and language throughout their school careers build a positive sense of self and identity that lasts a lifetime. Washington County Kids and Friends of Washington County Kids conducted polling this year that confirmed a comprehensive initiative is certain to pass with at least a 63% plurality. Voters overwhelmingly wanted these programs for all our children. When asked about pre-K for all alone, voters were willing to vote yes. When asked about pre-K for all and childcare before and after school and summer programs, voters were also willing to vote yes and in greater numbers. Comprehensive out-of-school time programming matters because of the more than 135,000 children under the age of 18 in our county. More than 15,000 are living at or below the federal poverty level. Just 39,000 children were being served by out-of-school time programs before the pandemic. Of the almost 16,000 3- and 4-year-olds, just about 2,600 were being served by preschool programs operated by nonprofits. There are no statistics on how many are being served by for-profit preschools. The average cost of childcare for preschoolers can range from $645 a month to $1,390 a month. The first for childcare alone, the second including preschool. After-school programs can range from free to $800 a month. And with an average wage of $13 an hour, preschool teachers and childcare workers don't earn enough to stay in their profession and provide consistent quality care and programming, nor do they have the wherewithal to support their families and pay for childcare for their own children. Out-of-school time programs provide a significant economic benefit to our community, our schools, and social support systems. Every dollar invested in out-of-school time programs yields a $7 to $10 return on investment. Every one of those dollars gets spent in Washington County and turns over 2 to 10 times. We're at a historic moment. We really can create sustainable funding for these programs that is not subject to changes in majorities in the state or federal legislature. We shouldn't have to wait. We can do this now. I implore you to put this measure on the ballot. Do it this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next, Madam Chair, we have Lizzie Gunthy. Lizzie, can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, hi, my name is Lizzie Gothier. I went to the King City budget meeting a few weeks ago to talk to them about like adding the West Side Trail and adding water access to the King City Park, just so we could add like a community garden or permanent restrooms in the future. And they told me that reaching out to the county would be the next place to go for more information. So that's all I'm here for.
Thank you, Ms. Gothier. If you could send an email to us right on our County Board of Commissioners website, you can submit a question and comment. That would be the most efficient way for us to hook you up with the appropriate subject matter experts that can help address your question.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Yeah, that's right on co.washington.or.us. And over on the left-hand side of the menu, click Board of Commissioners and contact us, and that'll work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie, for joining us today. Ms. Gothier, excuse me.
Right, I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, would any other members of the public like to provide comment for up to 5 minutes on any other county subject? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any additional hands, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. I would also, I made some comments during our work session that I would like to make here in our public board meeting so that the public has the benefit of hearing them as in my role as chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners. And it relates to comments that we have been hearing about a community effort under the banner of Preschool for All Washington County, and some of the comments that we have heard today. Various board members here have made comments, and we've all had the opportunity to meet with these community leaders who've been meeting as a task force on a proposal to increase access to affordable childcare for our children in our community ages 3, 4, and as mentioned today, out of school time as another proposal. And we have done a very early cursory look at the information from the task force who provided a report. And as the chair of the county board, I can comment that we understand that there is further work that's needed on the tax collection implementation of that proposal, as well as the funding distribution implementation as recommended, as well as program oversight and enforcement. All of that involves work from the county government should this board want to entertain sponsoring such an effort. And let me be clear, as one member of this board, and I believe that all of my commission colleagues have had the opportunity of hearing this from me as well as Commissioner Treese. It is unlikely that any member of our commission would have sufficient information to bring forward a board-sponsored ballot referral proposal for consideration with the coming deadline, the deadlines in the coming weeks in order to place such a proposal on the November ballot. So there's frankly, to put it in bottom line terms, there's work that would need to be done to ensure that any Board of Commissioners sponsored ballot proposal would be seen as credible. And we're at a juncture where we don't believe we have the opportunity to move forward at this time. It's not for lack of need. Let me be clear on that. So I just wanted to ensure that I took the opportunity during a Board of Commissioners meeting to share publicly what we've already shared with the principals of that community effort, not only in writing, but also in meeting, as well as what commissioners have spoken about in open work session. So there you have it. So with that, I would like to continue on with Board of Commissioner comments and highlight our upcoming meetings. We have a town hall with a theme of support for our older adults in our community members. That'll be this Thursday evening, the 23rd, starting at 6 p.m., brought to you by Zoom, and commissioners will be there. It's our second quarter town hall. Our next set of board meetings will be next Tuesday, June 28th, with a work session in the afternoon at 2 p.m. followed by an evening board meeting at 6:30. Then we're into the full first week of the month of July. Wow, time flies, summer indeed. But we're not going to be meeting on Tuesday, July 5th. Hopefully, it will be an incredibly light work for Washington County as a whole. Unlike last year, we're not forecast to have a heat dome here at the end of June, so hopefully it'll be a lot quieter than last year. Additionally, we're not in the midst of a heat wave. We haven't started a drought or anything like that, so it doesn't look like we'll need to work with fire marshals and get public messaging out about any of those fireworks or whatever that people like to blow up on July 4th, Independence Weekend. The following week, Tuesday, July 12th, we'll have a full day of work sessions starting at 9 a.m. Thursday, July 14th, we'll have our board roundtable starting at 9. Then we're into our third week of July. Work session starts at 9, board meeting at 10. And the very last week of July, Tuesday, the 26th, we'll have our work session at 2 p.m. and a board meeting at 6:30. Whew, there's a lot. Are there any other board comments or announcements at this juncture? Looking at the clock, we've been through a lot together in this meeting. It's now 12:50. We need our hour lunch, both for commissioners, but also for our staff. So our work session for the afternoon would you like it to start at 1:50? That's 50, or round it up to 2 p.m. Commissioners and Ms. Calvert stepping in for county administration, as well as Mr. Carr. We need you there for sure. What would you like? 1:50 and a little earlier, or 2 o'clock? Oh, you're forcing me to make a choice. 1:50 it is. Oh, Commissioner Rogers?
Pam was saying 2, and that's fine. I don't care. 1:50 or 2, whatever. An hour.
Okay, 2 o'clock it is. We'll see you back here at 2 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and with that, I need a motion to adjourn today's Board of Commissioner meeting. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers, for the motion, Commissioner Trees for a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand. Thank you, everyone. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0, and the meeting of Tuesday, June 21st, 2022 is hereby adjourned. See you in work session at 2. Bye-bye.